Manifestation. This seems to be the word that everybody is using recently. In short, manifest means to create or conjure something up. Usually, when this word is used, it's used in the context of a goal, a scenario, or when somebody wants something to happen. You've also probably had the conversation with somebody where you say the first one to spot a yellow car loses, and then all of a sudden, there's loads of yellow cars that just fill the streets. Or sometimes the opposite can happen and there are no yellow cars. Or you've learned a new word and all of a sudden it's popping up everywhere. On buses, on social media, in books. There's this theory that thinking positively will make positive things happen to you, around you, or for you. I was sitting on the sofa the other day with my friend and I was on Instagram and somebody had created an Apple Note that they shared with their friend. And on this Apple Note, they would add their positive experiences that have happened to them throughout their day. And I found this a really cool idea, so I tried it. For the next 7 days, I logged out every time something positive happened to me, around me, or for me. I'll be honest, I couldn't write down everything that happened to me at the exact time. Because number one, that would take me out of the moment. And number two, it just wasn't practical, which means around 85% of these were written before I went to bed, or even sometimes the next day, because I would forget. And this is something that I learned. I would forget. I'd forget to look out for these positive moments. And quite often I would find myself lying in bed, mentally rewinding my day to try and remember the positive things that had happened. So although it was a positive experiment to see if positive things happen to you when thinking positively, it also felt a little bit like a gratitude checklist at the end of the day. Out of the 7 days, can you guess how many things I wrote down? 46. 46 positive points. That's around 6.5 positive points a day. Now I feel like that's a lot, but I'm not sure. Maybe you should try it and let me know. And each one of these positive things was something new. Only one of those positive points was repeated throughout the whole 7 days. 17 of my points were me actively doing something. The other 29 were positive things that happened for me or around me. I decided in order to get a better understanding of the science and psychology behind it, I had to look more into it. And I had a great time doing this. I now know some more about psychology, specifically humanistic psychology and positive psychology, which I'm ashamed to say, but I didn't even know as a thing. I didn't study psychology, so why would I? But because of the interest and the fascination that I have with it, I just feel like I would have known more about it, especially now that I know it's something that I've taken a big interest in. It's safe to say that whilst writing this video, I have learned a lot. And this is why I do this kind of thing. Because although I'm sharing my experiences and my inspiration with you guys, I also learn a lot about myself too. Before I get on to positive psychology, or PP as I'm now going to call it, yes, I hear it too, but it was either PP or POSI, and they both sound kind of bad. So I went with PP. PP seemed to be a sort of branch from humanistic psychology, what some call the third force of psychology. It was created as a sort of backlash from the first force of psychology and the second force of psychology, which was psychoanalysis and behaviorism. It seems almost illogical to not give you a definition of humanistic psychology when talking about PP. Humanistic psychology is a psychology that acknowledges that humans are not just a sum of their parts. We have free will, we are self-conscious, we are self-aware. It looks a lot at self-actualization. The key figures that stood out when looking at humanistic psychology were Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. And funnily enough, in the 1950s, Maslow actually had a chapter in his book called Motivation and Personality, where he sort of passes down the torch to the next person. As he says, he is removing the chapter toward a positive psychology from his book, and he writes, so that the interested reader must seek them out or stumble across them. For the reader who would like a taste for himself. I think a good sampling of the people, the ideas, and the data is most available in the various books of readings. And then he begins to list some recommendations for the next person to discover, to open up, and to explore what we know today as positive psychology, which is where Martin Seligman and Mihai Csikszentmihalyi come in. Seligman said in an interview that PP is the study of PERMA.
Positive emotion, engagement, good relationships, meaning and purpose, and accomplishment. Positive psychology is the study of PERMA and how to build more of it in the world.
I think this is said beautifully, because this is what this video is all about. It's looking to see if thinking positively and acknowledging and even highlighting these moments in life can have a positive effect on us. Then downstream throughout our lives, through our engagement with others, into our relationships, to add more meaning and purpose into our lives. Csikszentmihalyi says in his article with Seligman, Intro to Positive Psychology, prevention researchers have discovered that there are human strengths that act as buffers against mental illness, and then lists courage, future-mindedness, optimism, interpersonal skill, faith, work ethic, hope, honesty, and perseverance. Alongside this, when looking, I found many articles were a bit too much. They all centered around extreme cases, like people who have cancer, or people who have gone through wars, or people who have experienced a natural disaster, which I think is a little bit out of range to what we're speaking about here. A common through line that I have found is the impact on our health, our well-being, and our future decisions. One thing that I have come to realize is that there's a fine line between positive thinking and having positive expectations. Obviously, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. And just because you think positively about one thing in your life doesn't mean that your life is going to dramatically change and improve. Like everything, it's about how conscious we are about it, how many repetitions we put into it, and how consistently we are doing it. And over time, our lives will improve in little steps. As James Clear says in Atomic Habits, making a choice that is 1% better or 1% worse seems insignificant in the moment, but over the span of moments that make up a lifetime, these choices determine the difference between who you are and who you could be. Success is the product of daily habits, not once-in-a-lifetime transformations. So by making positive thinking a habit, something you are conscious about, something you give yourself an action for, you are not allowing yourself to look at it in a different way, and you are choosing to look at life through a different lens. And what this has done for me is it's made me realize that although sometimes I may not think that in general, a lot of things are happening in my life. And maybe it's the same for you too, if you're working like a 9 to 5, or if you're into like a sort of daily routine, you may not feel like a lot of things are happening. Together, we could benefit from thinking a little bit more consciously and a little bit more positively about the world around us. I have this memory, and it's such a silly memory, but I have this memory of years ago when I was with my friend going towards the city centre, and there was this kid and he had this teddy bear and he was just running around in a circle looking like the happiest kid ever. Like all of his Christmases has just come at once. And that stayed with me for years. My point is this: you can go to the shop, you can go and take your rubbish out, you can go to work, you can even be inside your house. But by being a little bit more conscious and recognizing that something positive is happening right in front of you, you can take that energy and you can absorb it and you can keep it and appreciate it for later. Or you can use it there and then and it can elevate your mood. But it's your choice. It's up to you what you do with that energy. You could even look at these things negatively and you can fill yourself with negative energy. But who's that going to help? It's not going to help you. It's not going to help the people around you. So what's the point? As Epictetus said, it is not what happens to people that determine how happy they are. It is how they interpret what happens. Or as Shakespeare said in Hamlet, there is nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. Which, funnily enough, is an inspiration to one of my tattoos. It's all about perspective. So, in conclusion, I think everybody would benefit from doing this self-experiment. I am generally a positive person, and I like to keep an open mind. And yet still, this experiment was extremely eye-opening for me, because for the most part, it made me more conscious of the world around me. Even if you're the most positive person in the world, which, let's face it, a lot of us aren't. A lot of us are more reactive than proactive, because it's a lot more effort to take a few seconds, take a step back, and figure out how you want to control that moment, instead of letting the moment control you. There's a book called Untethered Soul, and in the book, there's a chapter called The Inner Roommate. We all have one. It's that voice inside our heads that sometimes we argue with or likes to clarify something. Most of the time, it's an opposing voice, or at least it is for me. Thinking more about this voice, would you rather the voice inside your head say something positive or something negative? If you pick the positive option, then that means that you want your inner roommate to speak and talk about positive things. And when you do this self-experiment, not only will your inner roommate be talking about positive things, but you will also be talking about positive things too. You will work together in harmony for 7 days. It'd be really cool if we could get a bunch of people doing this, and then we could work out averagely how many positive things are happening to people per day. But it's your fault. See you next time.